A Song of Ice and Fire has many crucial themes. Contrary to certain showrunner opinions, they are not just for 8th grade book reports, and I would argue one of the most important is that of rulership and what it means to truly be a good leader. There's a reason that one of the most iconic symbols of this series and of the show adaptation is the Iron Throne, this massive steel seat of rulership that acts as a metaphor for the power that holds the realm together. These swords fallen from the hands of Aegon's enemies, melted together by the flames of his dragon. Today, I want to examine rulership in Ice and Fire and discuss who I think would be the best person to sit the Iron Throne, both in the context of the series and then even moving beyond it into more of kind of a hypothetical sphere here. What do I mean by that? This video is going to effectively have two parts. The first part will be examining the candidates who are all attempting to claim the Iron Throne going into the Winds of Winter. The people who actually do seem to stand at least some tiny little bit of a chance to actually become the king or queen of Westeros. After that is done, and I've named my winner out of those individuals who I think would be the best ruler in the actual context of the series, and who I think has the best chance of actually taking it along with it, I want to get a bit more abstract and talk about not only characters in the main series, but throughout the history of Westeros, who I think would have been an excellent king or queen. The current system of inheritance, monarchy, is fairly restrictive. It's also not an ideal form of government, but that's neither here nor there. And I do want to get beyond that traditional inheritance structure and look at characters who wouldn't be in the line of succession necessarily, but who might be excellent candidates for the throne nevertheless. Though there are undoubtedly still some kings and royals who will still be covered, as they tend to also be pitched as good rulers by Martin in certain instances. I also want to hear from you in the comments who you think would be the best king or queen of Westeros. While you're down there, leave a like and subscribe. It does really help the channel. So the Iron Throne in Westeros is currently held by King Tommen Baratheon. Unlike in the show where Tommen is kind of like a character and actually does things, Book Tommen is a child and has to rule through a regent at this point. He could be a good king someday, I'm sure. We don't really know much about Tommen other than he just seems to be a generally kind kid and he's surrounded by terrible people who keep inflicting him with trauma. But overall, I think that it's unclear how exactly suited he would be to the throne, and this also falls into line with another candidate who is currently approaching the throne, that being Aegon the Sixth Targaryen, who also might be a Blackfire. While Aegon is in a much better position to grab and keep the throne than Tommen is, despite Tommen currently occupying it, we really don't know much about Aegon's aptitude for rule. Varys insists that he's been shaped for leadership since the moment he was born, living in exile, tutored by people like the great Jon Connington, but overall, Aegon's main characterization so far is just teenager, which is why I've grouped him here with Tommen in just being kind of potential man and just being a kid generally. I almost forgot to do this part. This is the last thing that I'm recording for this video because I forgot this character was actually trying to claim the Iron Throne at present. But Euron Greyjoy wants to be king of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't think he's actually going to be able to do it, and I do think he is far and away the worst suited person on this list to be king because he's a monster in pretty much every sense of the word. He is an eldritch being of immense horror, and while I don't think he'll actually be able to claim the throne, I do think he's going to succeed in creating some magical Chernobyl type accident that ends up drastically shaping the events of the story to come. So if you want to be successful that way, I'm sure he'd be great. Stannis Baratheon is an interesting case when you're assessing his role as a leader. Stannis being the king of Westeros is an idea that the people of Westeros have to grapple with as early as the first book in the series, and it seems to have a number of excellent upsides and a number of fairly crippling downsides. In terms of the upsides, he does genuinely seem to have his heart, or maybe just his pragmatism, if that would replace his heart, in the right place. He is focusing on the kingdom. He is trying to protect the world from this White Walker threat, which none of the other rulers are paying attention to. In their defense, they really don't know about it outside of Jon and Sam's letters. But regardless of that, he also is in a fairly disadvantageous position right now, as he is currently stranded in the north with very little in the way of allies. He is likely to win Winterfell, but beyond that, I think that all of his allies are then going to start backing the Starks to reclaim the north rather than necessarily stick with Stannis himself. And beyond being an excellent military mind, there are some conflicts that would inevitably come along with Stannis taking the throne, most notably a sudden shift in religion for the Seven Kingdoms, who currently worship the Seven, and Stannis is a worshiper of R'hllor, the Lord of Light, so there would obviously be at least some struggle there, given that the faith is now militarily active and there could be some problems. That, of course, leaves Daenerys Targaryen. She's a very interesting case. I would have had her on this abstract list, even if she wasn't my pick, for the best candidate to actually rule Westeros from the current crop of ruler hopefuls. Daenerys is the only one of that bunch with actual experience at rule, as she has been able to rule in Meereen. That does seem to be a source of some of the nitpicks regarding her leadership style. She does often compromise with bad actors throughout that time in Meereen and Dance with Dragons, and that can be very frustrating for certain readers to read, but overall, that is about her learning and overcoming that challenge. Her last chapter, Daenerys 10, A Dance with Dragons, sees her realizing that she needs to embrace who she is as a leader, as a person, and as a Targaryen. Some people think this is evidence for Mad Queen Daenerys. I think it is kind of the opposite. Daenerys, being true to herself, is a being of compassion who will defend her people at any cost. And I think that she has allowed herself to have these ideals of compromising and peace at any cost overwhelm that idea of just protecting her people beyond any necessary means that would need to be taken against those who would harm her. So overall, I do think she has learned from this experience quite a bit. Additionally, she does have dragons and is able to use them quite effectively, and we see her as quite an inspiring figure throughout this entire region of Essos as she kind of travels throughout Slaver's Bay and is able to gather more individuals into her host, into her retinue, and overall, she is judged to be an excellent leader by all those who have met her, including Barristan Selmy. This is a brief sidebar, but it's something that annoys me. I see people saying, oh, Daenerys is going to seem completely different when we see her from another viewpoint. We've already pretty much seen her from other viewpoints. Well, yes, technically, we've not seen her on page at the exact time as other viewpoints. Quentyn and Barristan both directly interact with Daenerys and then have chapters directly after and about those interactions, and neither of them think she's insane or bad, as people seem to think that other viewpoints will believe her to be when they meet her. Let's move on to the more abstract portion. Out of everyone in Westerosi history, who do I think it would be the best ruler of the Seven Kingdoms? There are a few candidates I'd like to discuss who did in fact rule the Seven Kingdoms. And the first up, and pretty high up on my overall list, would be kind of a triumvirate between King Jaehaerys I, Good Queen Alysanne, and Septon Barth. The strength of these three is that they did very much rule as a unit. Jaehaerys' main advantage as a ruler, in my eyes, was the fact that he not only surrounded himself with the best and the brightest from his kingdoms, but he actively listened to them in a way that many other rulers of Westeros didn't. And I think that that balance of perspectives between these dragon monarchs and this lowborn individual who is a Septon is a great way to rule the kingdom, and I think it is very much shown through the prosperity in Jaehaerys' reign. But I will say they do have flaws overall. I think Jaehaerys as a ruler is very much kind of brought down a bit by his failure in naming a clear successor. Well, yes, Viserys I was named as his successor. He kind of punted to the the Council of 101 AC, and that kind of took the decision out of his hands, whereas an actual royal precedent would have really helped that out quite a bit, which is why he's a bit lower in my eyes. Aegon the Conqueror is in a strangely similar boat to Jaehaerys, who is his descendant. I do think he is obviously the individual who was able to forge these seven kingdoms into one single realm. He also has a fairly successful reign after that war, ruling for 37 years, and much of that being peacetime, save for his occasional required wars with Dorne until he got a scary letter and stopped. He does seem to overall have a fine aptitude for ruling. He has some of the Jaehaerys advantage of actually listening listening to those around him. His rule is said to be a co-rule with his sisters, or at least later on with Visenya, who founds the Kingsguard after Rhaenys dies. But overall, like Jaehaerys, Aegon is limited by his not really setting precedents on several key issues, and I do think he very much could have set his house in order a bit better, as his sons and their quarreling would create a lot of bloodshed in the immediate aftermath of his death in the following 5 or so years of Maegor's wars. This is the last candidate who actually sat the Iron Throne, and it's a bit of a strange one because, like Tommen, he's kind of a child. Gaemon Palehair is a claimed Targaryen bastard who comes into power in a very tumultuous period for the Targaryens that I'm not going to reference for not spoiling certain other things. Regardless of that, he has these two regents that almost acted as his mothers, and he is essentially acting as Martin's mouthpiece to suggest policies that would very much benefit everyone in Westeros, but won't be enacted because they threaten the status quo and power of those who currently hold rule. Those rules issued by Gaemon include that husbands who beat their wives should themselves be beaten, regardless of why they did it. Men who lost limbs in war had to be fed and housed by the lord they were fighting for when the wound took place. The poor should be given bread and beer in times of famine, and that girls should be equal to boys in terms of inheritance. If the Targaryens did all of these things, I think they would have a lot fewer problems going forward, but as mentioned, it would very much be a disruption to the way things are currently functioning and could cause some issues, and very much would be things that could diminish the power of the crown, though I do think that diminishing the power of the crown, not a bad thing. I'm not huge on monarchy. Kind of the opposite of diminishing the power of the crown, I am talking about this next person because I feel compelled to talk about them. Bloodraven is somebody who I'm sure I'll get the name of in the comments. I'm not sure. I don't like him. I don't like Bloodraven all that much, not only because I think that he is overall kind of a weird vacuum of a character that we don't know all that much about yet. Additionally, I think that his method of rule does have very explicit downsides that we see in the third Duncan Egg story, The Mystery Knight, where he is currently ruling as Hand of the King, and the entirety of the kingdom is living in fear of his potential tactics. He's a mage, he has pretty much the best network of spies that one could imagine, but he overall is inflicting these things through entirely fear. While Machiavelli says that it is better to be feared than loved, ideally there should be some balance of the two. Just being feared makes you seem like a tyrant, and tyrants have a tendency to be overthrown, and Bloodraven did eventually kind of get his, getting sent to the wall, and now being a tree. Speaking of Tywin, he's not on this list because similar reasons to Bloodraven. This isn't communicated as well in the show, but Tywin's legacy goes up in smoke pretty much the second he dies, because the only thing that kept people together was the fact that everyone was scared shitless of him because he kept murdering entire families of people. That's not really a great way to rule, as discussed with Bloodraven, as it just creates terror. I've already talked about Stannis, so I should briefly address the other two Baratheon brothers. Robert is obviously not the perfect king. He is not a good king, but I do think he is a good king in one specific context, that being war. We see that with the Greyjoy Rebellion, which is quashed like no other rebellion in Westeros is ever quashed. Renly is also an interesting choice. He's not kind of an airhead that the TV show makes him out to be. He does have some idealistic ideas, but overall he does seem to be politically savvy and is actively maneuvering to try to improve things, not only for the realm generally, but for the people within it. I do think that he has kind of a balance of popularity from the commons and popularity from the lords that could very much aid a king. I think that overall, going back to that old adage said by Donald Noy, the blacksmith at Castle Black, who served the Baratheons for quite a long time, each of the Baratheons is a different kind of metal. I think he is a little too fawning on Robert, but that's neither here nor there. But overall, I think if you could blend the three Baratheon brothers in a blender, that would create pretty much the perfect ruler. So maybe that's an option. Speaking of Stannis and his sort of pragmatism, a figure that kind of reminds me of that is Mance Rayder, though I do think it's blended with maybe a greater investment and interest in his people. Mance Rayder very much embodies the wildling desires to live free and truly enjoy life, and he is entirely focused on saving his people and bringing them south of the wall. And we see in A Dance with Dragons that he is willing to use magic and deception and trickery to get what he needs, needs and to stay alive for his people, as we see him aiding Melisandre and freeing Theon and Jane, fake Arya, from Winterfell. So I do think he's very adaptable and has a lot of lived experience. Honestly, of the people currently alive, it would be neat to see Mance on the Iron Throne. I think Ned Stark is another interesting candidate to consider. Not only did he rule the North for decades and have a very good time doing so, he is tremendously well respected and liked by those he ruled over. He doesn't have a great aptitude for politics at court and all of these kind of schemes and backstabbing, but if he had a solid hand like a Tywin type or even a Varys, who is maybe a little bit better than either of those two people, I could see Ned doing a great job. In the same breath, I've also seen Davos suggested as someone who'd be, in an ideal world, if I could place anybody on the throne, a great candidate for this job. I think Davos is an excellent counselor. I think he would make an excellent hand of the king. He's a great advocate for so many things, but as a ruler in and of itself, I'm not sure if he'd have the kind of breadth of experience for leadership overall and being able to deal with all of these different factors that a king or lord would need to do, as when we see him, he is very much struggling with his duties as a hand and as a lord, doing them well, but I do think that is what he is best suited to, rather than straight up rulership. After all of that, who do I think would truly be the best monarch for the Seven Kingdoms? I do think it's a Targaryen. I do think it's a prince. I think it's someone who's in line for the throne, but someone who was never actually able to sit it. I think the best king of Westeros would have been Baelor Breakspear. Baelor Breakspear was the firstborn son of King Daeron the Good. Daeron II, the man who was very controversial as a king. He fought the first Blackfire Rebellion against the Blackfires, as that name would imply. And during that war, his son, Baelor, very much distinguished himself in combat. He was able to smash the Blackfire force alongside his brother Maekar, naming themselves the Hammer and the Anvil in the after effect. Additionally, he just seems to truly be a good man through and through. We actually get to meet him on page in some of the historical texts that I won't spoil, but we hear in The World of Ice and Fire that, to quote from that text, few could doubt that Baelor Breakspear would be a great king, for he was the heart of chivalry and the soul of wisdom, and came to serve his father most ably as hand. Not only was he great in warfare, he did serve as hand of the king, and did a good job there as well. And not only that, he seems to truly stand for the best ideals of knighthood. He's one of very few characters in either series that seems to be a truly just and good and moral person. I think a big part of the tragedy of Baelor Breakspear is the fact that he isn't able to become king. That we did have this perfect candidate who was right in line, next up to be on the throne, and the king died not long after he did. But overall, due to tragedies beyond any human control, he was taken from the world too early, and thus never able to rule. If I had to pick another character from the main series itself other than Daenerys, I think Catelyn Stark is kind of slept on. She was raised to be the heir to Riverrun, as she is the eldest child, and Edmure didn't come along for some years. She kind of batted 1,000 in terms of advice to Robb, and she does a great job acting as his diplomat to Renly's camp overall. I think she's an excellent candidate who people really wouldn't consider much, but overall, excellent choice for a ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, maybe with a Ned or a Littlefinger as hand, as both of them love her and would have no reason to betray her. Maybe just have both of them on her council or something. I think overall she would fully kick ass in that position. An additional pro and con of Catelyn. Con, this is going to be the most bastard-phobic regime that Westeros has ever seen, but on the plus side, her son will already be king at the end of the main series because he has the best story. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and it does really help grow the channel. I have many more videos for you in the very near future, so be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content on A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I look forward to making more analysis of all of them, and I hope you will join me for it. Again, like the video, subscribe. I don't remember if I said those already. I'm rambling. That happens. Sorry. Goodbye.